Good evening. My name is Amanda Hilliker, and I am a sophomore biology major here at Hillsdale, and I have been given the pleasure of introducing the speaker for this evening. Naomi Wolf is an author, columnist, professor, and co-founder and CEO of Daily Clout. She earned a BA from Yale University and a PhD from New College, Oxford University. A former Rhodes Scholar and Research Fellow at the Rothermere American Institute and Barnard College. She has taught as a visiting professor at SUNY Stony Brook and at George Washington University as a visiting lecturer. She has written for numerous publications, including as a columnist for The Guardian and the Sunday Times of London. She is the author of several books, including The Beauty Myth: How Images of Beauty Are Used Against Women, The End of America, which won the 2008 Nautilus Silver Award, Give Me Liberty, a handbook for American revolutionaries, and The Bodies of Others, The New Authoritarians, COVID-19, and the War Against the Human. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Naomi Wolf.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Thank you everyone for being here. You're very brave, given what I'm going to share with you tonight, but I promise we'll go to a very dark and scary place, and then we'll come out into a place of hope and forward thinking. Yes, but I do admire your courage. And before I begin, I just want to find the words to express how grateful I am to Hillsdale College, not only for inviting me, but for being what it is, which is truly a light right now to not just America, but to probably the world, in helping us remember what liberal arts are supposed to do and what Western civilization is supposed to be for, and what it means to actually take on that incredibly powerful and responsible and sacred task of overseeing the education of young adults from the ages of 17 or 18 to 21 or 22. And out of all the institutions that I've witnessed in the last 3 years, this is the only one in which the students have not been traumatized. I'm so grateful to all of you. So I'm just going to jump right in. I'm a pacer. Is there a handheld mic I might use while I pace? And, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bell. I'll stand here till a handheld manifests. So I should also start out by disclosing that I did spend my entire career on the left. I was an advisor to Gore 2000 and to the Clinton re-election. I'm sorry, I just feel I should share. I should share this. I should get it out. I should just be transparent. And the last 3 years have shown me that my former world has truly imploded, and that now, sad but true, but the happy part is that now I think something's happening in this country in which left and right really are losing any meaning, and what really matters is what I've found, which is my brothers and sisters are right here in this room. My brothers and sisters are anyone who cares about the Constitution, liberty, and freedom. So I'm so happy to be with you tonight. And I should also disclose, in case you're worried, this is not a pharma hit. I ran after a puppy, or we have an adorable new puppy, and he was faster than I am, so that's that. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about what's really in the Pfizer documents. And if I pace around like this, can you hear me? No. All right. Okay. And the reason I know what's in the Pfizer documents is not because I'm a medical doctor, I'm not. It's not because I'm a scientist, I'm not. I'm an English major. My DPhil is in Victorian poetry. But But I know what's in the Pfizer documents because something kind of miraculous in the history of intellectual inquiry happened to me and to the world as a result, and it's the following. Some of you may know that a lawyer named Aaron Siri pursued a lawsuit against the FDA to release the internal documents that Pfizer created as part of its rollout of its mRNA injection. And these are internal documents showing what happened when people were injected with this material, and also the experiments that led up to it internally. And thank God for the judge in that lawsuit, because the FDA asked that judge to keep these documents hidden for 75 years, right? Until long after we are all gone. Exactly. And the judge said no. And so the documents were released. So I read this, thank you so much, and as a journalist I was concerned because I knew that journalists, thank you so much. Are not equipped to, as lay people, to understand the technical language in the documents. And I also knew that Pfizer was releasing 55,000 documents a month, and even that is a bit deceptive because these are documents that each of them can be 10,000 pages long, right? So a massive tranche of data, and that ordinary journalists, it was going to go into the memory hole unless we found specialized readers to read through, analyze, and interpret, and boil down into manageable reports. Thank you so much. What was in the Pfizer documents? So I went on War Room, which is another great irony of this moment. Are we good? Good. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you to this lovely lady who helped me be audible. Thank you. Thank you. I feel free here at Hillsdale. I can go anywhere. I can say anything. I went on War Room, which is, one of these great ironies of this moment, that Steve Bannon and I have this, interlocutory platform where he listens to what I have to say, which is a miracle because I got deplatformed a year and a half ago for doing what I've done for 35 years, which is reporting on women's reproductive and sexual health. In June of 2021, I reported on the fact that women were experiencing menstrual symptoms subsequent to receiving an mRNA injection. I'm a feminist. I've been a feminist forever. My first book was published when I was 26, and it is not unusual for me to call attention to symptoms that women are having that are red flags. Anyone who knows 8th grade biology can tell if women are having menstrual symptoms, there are going to be other bad things happening down the road. And sure enough, Twitter deplatformed me for this obvious observation, and I was also smeared globally, and it turns out another lawsuit subsequently found that it was the White House, the CDC, possibly DHS, and Twitter all unlawfully colluding to deplatform and smear me for making this observation about women's health. Yeah, but fast forward, I was talking on War Room about the release of these documents, and I called for experts to help us read through them, and miraculously 2,500 experts responded to this call, right? Yes, yes. But the story is not over because I was ill-equipped to manage them. And so we had physicians, we had RNs, we had biostatisticians, medical fraud investigators, lab clinicians, research scientists, cardiologists, pathologists, anesthesiologists, some of the most distinguished scientists and medical people imaginable. But it's virtually impossible to manage 2,500 experts around the world, especially, if you don't have this background, wading through 55,000 documents a month. So again, the reason I tell this story is I really feel like something metaphysically beautiful is happening even in the middle of something metaphysically hideous. And that is this tiny woman, Amy Kelly, this tiny doll-like woman, and I stress her tiny doll-like appearance because it's so stereotypical, but she's such a force of nature, right, belying those stereotypes. She offered to be our project manager. She stepped right in, and she just calmed the storm. And she organized these 2,500 experts, immediately 3,500 experts around the world, into 6 working groups with a committee at the head of each, who were busy churning out reports based on these primary source documents so that they could tell the world, using the highest level of analysis possible, but broken down into language that everyone could understand, what was in the Pfizer documents. So this is just stunning to me that this happened. So now there are 58 reports, and now is the sad part of what I have to tell you. The Pfizer documents contain evidence of the greatest crime against humanity in the history of our species. And I'm so sorry to have to walk you through this, but there's no way around it. We just have to go through, and the beauty of Hillsdale is that you all are tough and like truth. And so with truth we can prevail, but it's painful. Some of the things that came to light, just some headlines. Pfizer knew, for instance, 1 month after rollout, so that's November of 2020, that the vaccines didn't work to stop COVID. Indeed, in the Pfizer documents, a month after rollout, and this is marketing, post-marketing, so it's out there, the spokesmodels are telling you to do it, the ads are in social media, the ads are on television. A month after rollout, Pfizer's internal documents identify that the vaccines have vaccine failure and failure of efficacy, and they identify that the third most common side effect of the Pfizer vaccine is COVID. The second headline, which is stunning, is that within a month or two, Pfizer was getting so many reports of adverse events, meaning bad things happening to people who had been injected, that they understood that they needed to hire 2,400 full-time staffers in order simply to process the paperwork of the adverse events that they were receiving reports of, as well as to prepare for the flood of adverse events that they knew they would get in the near future. Pfizer knew in May of 2021 that the vaccines had caused heart damage in 35 minors within a week after the injection. And Pfizer knew, right? You've got to understand that all of these documents say FDA confidential at the bottom of them, right? Pfizer and the FDA shared these documents. And the FDA knew that 35 minors sustained heart damage. But the government of the United States, and I'm embarrassed to say I voted for these people, didn't tell parents until August of 2021 that there was an elevated risk of heart damage in healthy young adults. 4 months later, and in those 4 months, what did the young adults of America receive? A constant battering with propaganda on social media, on television, in news outlets, bought up by money in the CARES Act, as well as from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with influencers showing off their injection site, saying, we can do this together, we can be strong, do it for grandma. All of this aimed at young adults. They did not tell the young adults, the healthy young adults of the United States, your generation, that this was elevating a risk of heart damage, till 4 months later. You may recall that the CDC said that the materials of the injection stay in the injection site. And the materials are lipid nanoparticles, they are mRNA, and the lipid nanoparticles are an industrial fat, which is covered in polyethylene glycol, which is a petroleum byproduct, right? and spike protein. Well, the CDC said it stays in the injection site. And then it says, and I remember asking doctors, like relatives who are doctors and were funded by NIH grants, where does the spike protein go? And they were like, you know, when you're a journalist, you've got an ear for nonsense. They were like, well, your body metabolizes it, you know, or, well, you'll digest it and excrete it. And it's like they had no evidence to give me, to show me the basis for their response. But in fact, that's not what happens to these materials. And Pfizer knew that. These materials biodistribute, this is Pfizer's language, throughout your body in 48 hours. And where do they settle? Well, lipid nanoparticles are designed to cross every membrane in the human body. They've known this for 10 years. So where do these ingredients go? They go to the brain. Some of you have noticed changes in the personalities of loved ones who have taken these injections. They biodistribute to the liver, the adrenals, the spleen, and if you're a woman, they accumulate in your ovaries. Now, these are industrial fats coated with polyethylene glycol in your ovaries, okay? And what's really scary, Dr. Robert Chandler, who's a respected pathologist who's treated the Lakers and the Angels, he wrote this report, and he shows that the chart shows the graph going down as it leaves the injection site, but going up as it accumulates in these various organs over time. And what's incredibly scary if you're a woman is that there's no mechanism that we've found by which the body gets rid of the lipid nanoparticles in the ovaries. So your first injection, some go into your ovaries. Your second injection, more go into your ovaries. Your booster, more go into your ovaries. There's no mechanism with which the body can release this material that we've seen. And Pfizer knew. So the lipid nanoparticles, as I mentioned, cross every membrane in the human body. And not unexpectedly or not surprisingly, in the Pfizer documents, it shows that in only 3 months there were 1,200 plus deaths out of 42,000 plus adverse events. And there are catastrophic categories of the kinds of side effects that people sustain. And what's so heartbreaking to me knowing this is that these are not the same side effects that the CDC tells you about or your doctor tells you about. The CDC will say, you'll have fatigue, you'll have chills maybe, there'll be a little swelling at the injection site. That's not what's in the Pfizer documents. There's, at industrial scale, strokes, hemorrhages, blood clots, lung clots, leg clots, neurological disorders, dementia-type disorders, Guillain-Barré, Bell's palsy. I mean, the neurological disorders are at industrial scale, but also side effects you don't necessarily expect. But now that I know about them, I see them everywhere. The number one side effect is joint pain, which is so interesting, right? Did the CDC tell you about joint pain? And yet I know healthy young adults who are limping or who have had knee problems or shoulder problems, their shoulders separated. Well, think about lipid nanoparticles. They go through every membrane, they're going through cartilage. They're destabilizing cartilage. And the other surprising side effect is myalgia, muscle pain. And again, I know healthy men in their 40s and 50s, you know, ate right, went to the gym, all the things, organic food, in constant pain from muscle pain. And that's right there at industrial scale in the Pfizer documents. But you are not told about that. But in addition, I don't say lightly that it's mass murder. There are 61 deaths from stroke, for example. Half of the stroke adverse events took place within 48 hours of the injection. There are 5 deaths from liver damage, and half of the liver damage adverse events took place within 48 hours of the injection. Now, one of the most disturbing reports is report 56, which is about children. And this is so chilling. So the emergency use authorization for children didn't get passed until about 4 or 5 months ago. But in early 2021, in other words, when it wasn't legal to do this, Pfizer injected 62 kids, some of them as young as 2 months old. 28 of them, we don't know what happened to them. That we don't know if they survived. Among the 34 whose records are still in the Pfizer documents, there's a 7-year-old British girl who sustained a stroke, and there's a 2-month-old baby with liver damage. And so this is such a chilling report because it's clear, and we did additional investigation of this, there were 1,000 kids in the United States in different university hospitals, including Rochester Medical Center, that were experimented on prior to it being legal to inject children with this material. And I can promise you, these are what society calls throwaway kids. These are not kids whose parents have lawyers. These are not kids with whose parents have a voice. We're going to find that these are kids who are institutionalized, who are orphaned or discarded in some way and used in this way. Now I want to dial. Are you guys okay? Can I keep going? Okay, all right. It's tough. Now I want to go to the centerpiece of what we found in the Pfizer documents. It's not even the deaths. It's not even the disabilities. What is abundantly clear, and I don't say this lightly, I'm Jewish, my grandmother lost 9 brothers and sisters in the Holocaust. I don't talk about Mengele or Nazi experiments lightly. But in the center of the documents, there is a literally Mengele-type experiment at a grand scale on human reproduction. 360-degree experiment on how to disrupt and impair human reproduction. So, for example, in the Pfizer documents, women were told not to get pregnant, which is interesting, right? It's a respiratory disease. Why would you tell women not to get pregnant? But nonetheless, 270 women got pregnant. Out of those 270 women, Pfizer lost the records, which is illegal. You're supposed to, by law, follow subjects to the end of the trial. They lost the records of 234 of these pregnant women. Of the 36 women whose pregnancies came to term, over 80% of them lost their babies. Spontaneous abortion or miscarriage. Many people have asked me, is shedding real? Right? Anecdotally, and in fact, I got deplatformed because I reported that women were describing disruptions in their own menstrual cycles or feeling ill around other women, like coworkers who had recently received an injection. Shedding is real. In the Pfizer documents, Pfizer defines exposure to the vaccine as skin contact, inhalation, and sexual intercourse, especially at conception. And this is very bad news, and I'm sorry, but they seem to identify the risk or the transmission of exposure to the vaccine as male to female in sexual intercourse. And they specifically told the men in the trials not to have intercourse with childbearing age women, and if they did, to use 2 reliable forms of birth control. So there was clearly something about conceiving with a vaccinated male that Pfizer was guarding against. So we know now that there's horrific damages to conception from this injection. As I keep saying, the lipid nanoparticles traverse every membrane. The placenta is a membrane. Of course, I mean, the most sacred place in the world is the placenta with a baby gestating in it, right? You can't impair or compromise that membrane without damaging that fetus and that fetal environment. The lipid nanoparticles traverse the placenta, they get into the environment of the fetus, and maternal fetal medicine specialist named Dr. Jim Thorpe has found in his patients that the placentas have a network of calcifications caused by these lipid nanoparticles, and babies are being delivered earlier because of these impaired or compromised placentas, and he's seeing at great scale chromosomal abnormalities in newborns of vaccinated mothers. Lipid nanoparticles in the Pfizer documents are also revealed to enter breast milk. And this stands to reason. Remember, we were told, oh, these materials stay in the injection site. Well, they're circulating through the blood. What is breast milk made of? It's built up out of blood and lymph. So the lipid nanoparticles covered in polyethylene glycol are entering breast milk of nursing mothers, and nursing babies in the Pfizer documents sustained seizures. And one baby died in the ER after nursing from a vaccinated mother from multi-organ system failure. 4 of the moms who are lactating in the Pfizer documents had breast milk that turned blue-green. And by the way, this is not just the Pfizer documents. The NIH did a study subsequently that also found that babies nursing from vaccinated moms were having failure to thrive, not putting on weight. They were agitated and restless and sleepless. They downplayed it. But I just want to tell you, like, as a woman, for a moment, it's hard, right? It's hard enough to be a healthy woman, menstruating, conceiving a baby, carrying a baby, delivering a baby, nursing a baby. These are great, great gifts, but they take a lot of strength and stamina and, social support and love. They're not easy to do. And nursing a baby is not easy to do at its easiest, when you're at your most healthy. So I want to tell you that as a woman and as a feminist and as a mom, when I read that nursing mothers have gone in the last 2 years from 34% of all moms to 16% of moms, something's wrong, right? Not only are babies in the next generation not getting that primal experience of total love, total nurture, total safety, which is so important, but there's something that is leading the moms to not be able to nurse those babies. And I think we have a clue here in the contamination of vaccinated moms' breast milk. I also want to note that Bill Gates rolled out lab-grown breast milk right at the moment that women were suffering these harms to their own ability to sustain their children. Dr. Chandler, in the Pfizer documents, I'm also going to say it's a constant theme is a war against women, and really a war against women's ability to reproduce. In the Pfizer documents, Dr. Chandler found that of the adverse events, 72% of them were sustained by women. And this is constant throughout. It's a constant 3-to-1 women to men. It's not that men are not being harmed, but it's that women are being harmed so disproportionately. And of the 72% of adverse events, there's this chart, which is so hard to look at, in the Pfizer documents, in which Pfizer defines 16% of those adverse events as, quote, their words, reproductive disorders. Their words. In that chart, and this is 0.49 for men, not that that's not, bad, it's bad, but it's like, what kind of monsters look at 16% reproductive disorders and keep going? In that chart, in that section of the documents, there's a kind of a subchart with names, scientific names. And again, if you're a woman or a mom, this is going to make your head explode. There are 20 different scientific names for ruining women's menstrual cycles in that chart, right there. And this is why I say Nazi medicine, because it's bad enough what the Nazis did, but an additional layer of what's chilling and anti-human is how scientific their records were. So there's a scientific name for having 2 periods a month, or a scientific name for bleeding every single day of the month, or a scientific name for not having any menstrual cycle at all month, and you can assume you're not fertile or not easily fertile under those circumstances. horrible, I mean, there are children in the audience, so I don't want to get too graphic, but scientific names for the most horrible things you can imagine being done to the bodies of women. You know, women years postmenopausal, bleeding, 10-year-old girls having menarche upon being injected, and horrible things that I won't describe being part of women's experience of menstruation. So I just want you for a minute to imagine, as educators and as parents, not even as students, because I feel like I'm burdening you enough with this information, but think about how hard it is. You know, women have so many jobs, right? They're students, they're moms, they're workers, they're wives, they're parents. I guess I said moms. It's a big job. You know, and now imagine doing that with this debilitating health condition, let alone trying to just conceive a baby and, you know, bring a baby to term and have a healthy delivery. So not surprisingly, and this relates directly to my being deplatformed a year and a half ago, not that what happened to me personally is important compared to what happened to everyone, not surprisingly, in 2022, around the world, 9 months after the rollout in most of Western Europe, there's a 13 to 20% drop in live births all over Western Europe and North America. And Singapore and Australia, 13 to 20% drop in live births, with stunning sub-data like double the number of stillbirths in Scotland, a highly vaccinated country, 89 stillbirths in Canada in one province when usually they have 2 or 3. Dr. Thorpe describes 5 or 6 miscarriages a week when before they would have 2 a month. Absolute baby die-off is what I called it in an early essay about this. So let me now tell you, this is not universal. It's not around the world. This drop, this murder of the next generation is not global. It's Western Europe and North America. And I'll get to the meaning of that shortly. So I mentioned that men and boys are not, spared. Amy Kelly, for instance, found that lipid nanoparticles degrade baby boys in utero. They don't even have to be vaccinated. The lipid of course, the testes are a membrane, so these lipid nanoparticles traverse the testes of fetal baby boys and degrade the Sertoli cells and the Leydig cells, which are basically the factories of masculinity. So we don't know if these little baby boys of vaccinated moms are going to be able to grow up to be sexually functioning adult men. The Sertoli cells and Leydig cells are responsible for the male hormonal balance that create things like deep voices, hair on their bodies, broad shoulders, all of the things that we associate with normal masculinity, and that is being degraded. So, and again, when I say why this focus on reproduction, it's a respiratory virus, right? So why in the Pfizer documents did they mate rats, sacrifice the rats, and then analyze the cells of the sexual organs of the rats? Right? It's a respiratory virus. So these are monsters, and there's no way to avoid concluding that they're focused on disrupting human reproduction. So that's a lot. And now I'm going to step back and put it in geopolitical context and answer some of the questions about why, from my point of view. Very hard to process that anyone would do this. It's very tempting to think, well, they're just greedy. They couldn't stop. They were making so much money. These are oversights. We've had greedy corporations in our history before, the jungle, right? That's not what this is, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry to tell you. I firmly believe, and I'll give you my evidence now, that this is a bioweapon and that we're under attack. So let me step back now and tell you who made the Pfizer injection. You may well think, as I did, that a German company made the Pfizer injection, but that's not true, or that's not the whole truth. Pfizer is a German-Chinese company, and specifically its subsidiary BioNTech, which it purchased right before the pandemic, is a German-Chinese company. BioNTech signed an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding, with Fosun Pharmaceuticals in 2021. So Fosun Pharma is wholly owned by the Chinese Communist Party. It's one of the biggest and most important pharmaceutical companies in China. And you may not know that every corporation in China is basically run by the Chinese Communist Party or answers to the Chinese Communist Party. So, pardon me, which is why it's nonsense for Dr. Fauci to think that, Wuhan is a bunch of independent scientists scampering along doing nice things for America. They're run by the CCP and by the People's Liberation Army of China. So Fosun Pharma, whose CEO is a senior official in the CCP, didn't just sign an MOU with BioNTech, but in 2021, if you look at the SEC filing, which is our stock exchange filing for BioNTech, it shows 100% completed tech transfer of the technology, the IP, from BioNTech to China. It doesn't say to a Chinese individual, to a Chinese company. It says the words to China, which means that right now in 2023, if you get a Pfizer injection, you're getting an injection whose IP, and IP can mean the formula that they're using, it can mean the data harvested from using it, it can mean the manufacturing process, it can mean any of those. But all of that is owned by China now when it goes into your American body in America. Not only that, Fosun Pharma, they don't give this injection to the people of China. And by the way, I'm an anti-racist. This is not an anti-Chinese position I'm taking. It's an anti-Chinese Communist Party position I'm taking because they want to kill us. Okay? So the manufacturing plants, this stuff is not going into the people on the mainland of China. BioNTech and Fosun created 1 billion doses, and they opened 13 manufacturing plants in Western Europe to distribute these doses. And they opened 2 of them in the United States of America. One is in Princeton, New Jersey, and one is in Springfield, Massachusetts. CCP-owned manufacturing plants producing the injection that goes into the bodies of school children here in the United States of America. Now, in 2018, there was a study by a group of Chinese scientists that showed that lipid nanoparticles damage fertility, mammalian fertility. So they knew when they were making up this formula that it did this. In 2021, there was a study in Hong Kong, which again is overseen by the Chinese Communist Party, that showed that the first injection enlarges the heart, causes some problems in rats, and the second injection causes catastrophic harms in those rats. The hearts are enlarged, there's visible white patches on the hearts, and it's multi-organ system failure again. So to me, I'm not a scientist, and it's kind of lucky. I come from the world of politics and journalism. To me, it is obvious that that's an experiment to show the Chinese Communist Party how you kill Westerners without leaving fingerprints. There's more I can tell you about why I believe this is a bioweapon. Think about who got mandated. And I'm very much influenced in my conclusions about this by my husband, Brian O'Shea, who spent 12 years in military intelligence and then in the intelligence community. And from the very beginning was saying, this is China, it's a bioweapon. And I was like, honey, I love you, but that's crazy. And then he showed me so much primary source documentation that there's no way to avoid this conclusion. But look at who got mandated with these injections. And as a political consultant, you learn to reason backwards. You look at the effect and then go you draw conclusions from the effect, because the story is made up, always, right? You learn that as a political consultant. The principals will set a goal, they'll say, get us to this goal, and then the chief of staff goes to the message shop, meaning the storytellers, and says, tell a story to get people to accept this goal, and that's how politics works. So what is the effect, right? I'm not asking you to think about the story, which is save your grandma, do it for the community, right? Safe and effective. That's the story. The effect, who got mandated? Our military got mandated. Our first responders, our healthcare workers, our doctors and nurses got mandated. Why? The vaccine doesn't affect transmission. We know that. Why? Right? How do you cripple a society? Our elites' kids got mandated. I just spoke at Yale. I have loved ones at Princeton. I have loved ones at Cornell. These parents are distraught, which is why I love Hillsdale so much. But, how to cripple a country? Take out the kids of the leaders, right? Take out the kids of the wealthy, the kids of the elite. Who else got mandated? Firefighters got mandated. All the people we need in order to defend ourselves are the ones who got mandated. Pilots got mandated, right? Cripple a society. They went for those populations. And they went for those populations rigidly, right? There's no reason that every university except 6, including Hillsdale, had to mandate the kids, except that HHS gave them the money and they said you have to do it, right? Well, this is a captured administration and captured institutions that are allowing the CCP and their allies, the World Economic Forum, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to cripple our country. As Brian put it, the CCP wants our land, they want our natural resources, they don't want our people. So that's what you've got. And later studies like those of Ed Dowd show that disability among 18 to 39-year-olds is off the charts, which is just what you want in what's called an asymmetric warfare, which is the CCP likes to not have a kinetic war, but to kind of degrade and demoralize a population rather than having a hot war with shooting. And that's exactly what's going on. And the last thing I'll say for my evidence is that of the adverse events, I mentioned there are 42,000 of them in the Pfizer documents. 36,000 plus are in the United States. About 8,000 plus are in Western Europe in order of political importance. So Britain, Germany, France, Spain, Greece, Italy, like that. Out of all the rest of the adverse events, 7,000 adverse events, roughly, all the 51 countries around the world, other than Western Europe and North America, where this was deployed, all of those only account for 7,000. So that's not random, right? That's targeting North America and Western Europe. And the last thing I'll say for my evidence that this is a bioweapon, and this is super, super chilling and creepy, is that it's so easy to target a subject with this injection by things as simple as temperature or dose. Because lipid nanoparticles are liquid at super cold temperatures. You remember the news stories about it has to be really chilled, they have to have special refrigerators. That's true. But lipid nanoparticles coalesce, clot, solidify at room temperature and at body temperature. And what you've seen is the guidance about how to store these has changed constantly. So first it was like, keep it in the freezer. And then it was like, you can leave it out for 2 hours. Then it was like, you can leave it out for 6 hours. So there's constant variation in the directions originating from China about how to store this injection. And temperature alone can cause problems. And the other thing I'll tell you is dose. And this is absolutely horrific. But Pfizer dose of active ingredients is 30 micrograms. Moderna is 100 micrograms, more than 3 times as much. and someone I love got injured by the Moderna vaccine. Well, in the Pfizer documents, it says that 100 micrograms is so high, they had to drop it internally due to its reactogenicity, Pfizer's words. But they didn't tell everyone who got the Moderna dose that this was too high and they shouldn't take a booster. They just kept going. Do you know what the dosage is for children? They want it to be 100 micrograms. Tiny children. So that is my incredibly dark summary to you of what's in the Pfizer documents. I now want to pivot in just the minute or two I have left to happier thoughts, because I don't want you to leave here, clinically depressed and giving up all hope. There's a lot of hope in truth. And again, that's why I love this community, even though I'm brand new here. Because the most horrible things can be faced if you embrace this principle of liberty and of truth and community. So Pfizer has announced that they have 430 million doses that have expired because no one wants them. And it's vanishingly small numbers of parents who have given in to the relentless propaganda to vaccinate their children with mRNA injection. So informed consent makes a difference, and informed consent is the law, which people conveniently forgot in the medical establishment in the last 2.5 years. We have lawyers suing Pfizer, and I do believe, and there are a lot of good bills that are being introduced to strip Pfizer of its impunity from lawsuits. And I thoroughly hope and believe, I believe we're looking at a mass murder situation, a war crime, crimes against humanity. And I believe and hope that all of these evildoers, as friendly as they look in their little outfits, talking to the cameras, I hope they will all face justice in this lifetime. And the last thing I want to say, and I promise I'll make it fast and I'll take questions, is this has been such a hard journey, for me and for Amy Kelly and for all these volunteers to go on, because we're really looking at this abyss of human evil every single day. It's like looking at Baba Yar, when that was first opened to the world. It's completely hard to believe that such a thing has taken place and is still taking place. But I guess very quickly, I just want to say that this experience has forced me to believe in God more literally than I had before. And I know that sounds paradoxical, but I felt like this evil overtook the world in lockstep, in perfect unison, in a way that I could not explain using my critical thinking, my great education. It didn't act like any history previously, right? It was far less random. And there was something metaphysical about it, and the way people were just lost in delusion, all in one delusion. The media all told one lie. Doctors who were healers one minute were death dealers the next minute. Something absolutely metaphysical about it that went beyond human history. So I do believe I've concluded, I don't have answers, but I've concluded that we're in a time, like really a biblical moment, where humanity is being asked to choose, basically. And I mean, this is very subjective, but I kind of believe that God is going, okay, this is how bad humans can be if you lose touch with me. It's this bad. So I don't really know the answer to that except to say out loud, which I never used to do, that I believe that. And I guess, I read the Bible a lot these days, and I read the Old Testament a lot. And I keep turning to, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. So I believe that. So God willing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.